Anyway, hey, welcome everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining me this evening. For those of you who don't know me, in fact, I think everyone in here knows me, but I'm going to go through it anyway because I've been practicing it all day, so I've got to say it now. My name's Rob. I'm from the far north, from a little place in the Hokianga called Paoringa. I am Te Aupōuri Uri o Tai. I'm the father of three gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful children who are just like their dad, gorgeous, beautiful, and wonderful. And I'm also a very concerned father and a very concerned member of our community. Why are we here today? Now, I do want to make it absolutely clear, this is not a hit piece. This is not a hit piece on said journalist. I've been trying over the last few days to appeal to his humanity and generally concerned about our community, our country, and generally where the journalist landscape, where it's changed, and why it's changed, if anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a video. It's 19 minutes and 35 seconds long. And what I've decided to do also is there's a series of screenshots that I'd all like you to, I'll just grab it here, change, copy link, and I will drop those in the, where is it? Drop those in the chat. And enter. So there's a link to a whole lot of screenshots and an email that I've been having with said journalist. And it sort of gives you an overall context of the conversations that have been going on during this time also. So while you're reading those, I'm going to let the video play. And after the video, what I'd like to do is open up the floor and have a general discussion so that I can get your views on what I'm hearing so that we're all on the same page and I'm sort of not thinking I'm going crazy about what I'm hearing because it's really interesting. So I'm going to share. So can you all see that?
Yep.
Yep. Awesome. So I'm going to play through it. If you've all got the links to have you still got the links to the Dropbox?
Yep.
Awesome. So while that's playing, I'll let you read the screenshots and the email, and we'll go after. Don't forget, it is 19 minutes and 35 seconds. So grab your popcorn, chuck the kids in the wardrobe, and kick the dog outside, and sit back and relax. Bring your popcorn. I've got my rations. And
rations.
Oh, they're my favorite.
Love them. I've got a bag of them too.
Towards the end of last year, there was an inquiry that found that there'd been a blogger who had been receiving information from the SAS through the OAA, which was used for political purposes. There are also allegations involving the same blogger getting preferential treatment from the former Justice Minister when it came to the OAA. There were allegations at the time that the police had been fiddling crime stats and had buried an OAA or rejected an OAA to disguise that. And a former customs lawyer who had said that his organisation had a preference to let requests languish, be refused and go off to the Office of the Ombudsman rather than deal with them in the way that they could have or should have been done, which was an allegation that Customs denied. So in this environment, we've got an inquiry now by the Office of the Ombudsman into the way that the public service responds to what are quite lawful, reasonable OAA requests. So if I wanted to know something, I simply had to ask. If I wanted to know how milk powder was exported, I'd ring up whatever the equivalent of MPI was then, and I would tell whoever answered the phone what I wanted to know. And I would be transferred through the telephone system until I got to the person that knew how milk powder was exported. And very often that'd be the person that was working down on the docks or working at some sort of central area where it was all shipped out, and they would answer my questions for me. It's a very different world that we operate in now But what it was like then, to have a question in mind and to be able to ring somebody up and talk to the person that actually had the answer, was a fantastic thing. So I was at my first OAA request in 1993. It was about 4 years into working as a journo, and it was to a Crown Health enterprise, and it was because there was a communications manager there who was, in my view, obstructive and very difficult to work with in terms of getting information out of the organisation. This was somebody who would head off these phone calls that I was making to staff and put themselves in the way of the process. So I had to use the OAA to get the information that I needed to get from that organisation. That person now, when I look back, was well ahead of his time. That person now, well, 10 years on, worked for a tobacco company, still now works for a tobacco company. So a decade on from there, I came back from the UK, it was about 2002, and I found that the comms manager that existed in that Crown Health enterprise 10 years ago, that they were populated throughout the public service, they were everywhere. And what they were trying to control then was the flow of communications that were going into the public service. Not the content or the nature of it, but that would come down the track. And so the way it would work then is I would ring up to find out about exportation of milk powder, and whoever answered the phone would say, "Oh right, you're a journalist, well you need to talk to our comms team," and you'd be transferred through the comms team. And what the comms person would do would listen to what I wanted to know, and then they would go and find the person that had the answers for me, and they would connect the two of us. Or find a way for the two of us to speak to each other. So interviews would happen, which they don't really happen now, and they'd be about really mundane matters, quite simple matters, how government works, how the machinery fits together, what comes out the end, which is all good stuff because it tells people about how the country works, it tells people about the system that they contribute to. It's all process stuff. So there was very little spin at that time, and my asking those questions and getting the answers back was, when I look back at it now, was the OAA in action. My questions would be a verbal request and the responses I would get would be a verbal answer, and it all worked. It worked fine. The shift came, I think, after the 2005 election, and that was the Labor government entering its third term, and it felt, I think, to Labor at that time that things were going to get away on them. And what happened during that term, I think, has perverted everything that has come since. And it came through what's called the No Surprises policy. The No Surprises policy popped up in the 1996 coalition agreement between New Zealand First and National, and it was also rolled out to be part of the SOE, and it was intended that it would give no surprises to the government. It was a safety valve, but it was intended to be for quite big things. So somewhere along the way, half of Transpower got sold off and nobody ever told the Prime Minister. And that was disastrous because you really should tell the Prime Minister about big things like that. But that's the scale of the thing that it was meant to be for. Along the way, it crept out of the SOEs and political agreements, and it went right through the public service, because ministers realised that they had a device through which they could reduce the surprises that they suffered. And as it went on, the surprises that ministers no longer wanted to experience became greater in number and much smaller in significance. So what that had the effect of doing was placing an imperative on the public service which it should never have had to shoulder, and that was to think about what it was that might surprise a minister. Decisions were made, I believe, with the minister's discomfort in mind. Decisions were made that were essentially political in nature. Now, the answer to the question, what would surprise a minister, is pretty much anything. I mean, the idea of journalists getting information is horrifying because you never know what they're going to do with it. They could do anything. They might write news stories. Interviews became fewer. Comm staff, they became distant and difficult, and suddenly when you wanted information about milk powder, it wasn't a matter of ringing up and asking for the information about milk powder. you'd ring up and you'd ask, and they say, oh, could you put your request in writing? So you put your request in writing, and off the email would go, and you'd sit there and you'd wait, and people would look at those questions and they'd think, what's he really after? What's he going to do with this? And then a day later, a couple of days later, you get the email back with answers that don't actually bear any resemblance to the questions that you asked, because they're concerned about what might happen if you're actually given what you wanted. You get given lines to fill a hole, like you need talent or lines to fill holes in a story, like a wall needs polyfiller to cover up the gaps that get knocked in it. The lines tend to arrive at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just as the person that's sending it to me runs out the door. And the only time that we meet, the media and the public service is at basically weddings and funerals, when things go really, really bad and they have to apologise for them, or really, really good and they want to crow about it. And the only interactions that you have are at the most senior of levels, and you don't ever get the opportunity to appreciate at a very granular level what most of the public services do. So we lost contact, and the relationship became more oppositional, and neither of us particularly knows what the other party is doing. The media, we still need information, and the less we were spoken to, or the less you spoke to us, the more OIA requests we put in. We turned to the law, and we expected that to give us the answers that we need. I put a lot of OIA requests in, easily more than 100 a year, I would say. And I have colleagues that probably ask at a similar level. And along the way, we started to suspect that we were getting screwed here too. Ministers don't like being surprised by anything. So OIA requests, they'd be processed and then they'd be sent off to the beehive so that they could have sign-off. And you can see the process. OIAs, which are being sent to media, and they get isolated as media or opposition political parties, they're classed as sensitive OIAs, and they need special attention. They need the ministerial eye applied to them. And it just baffles me, astonishes me that ministers would think that they actually have anything to do at all with that OIA process. 99 times out of 100, I don't believe they should. They have no role to play. So before long, you wind up with a situation where nobody wants to surprise the minister. I've been told of officials who decide to remove surprising material before it goes off to the beehive. I know of ministers who get these quite mundane requests going through the sign-off process, but the OIA arrives late because they sit there at night in their offices going through this process document that you've asked for, a couple of 100 pages of how something works, because that's all, sometimes all we want to know is how the machinery of government works. They go through this thinking, what's that bastard looking for? What's he really after? And so where does that leave us? I think in a very dark, dark place. So I've a quite kinetic relationship with the public service because of some of the stories that I do. And because of that, I worried that I had a view that was overly dark. I asked my colleagues whether or not they felt the same way that I do, and they did not. I was the cheery optimist. They thought far, far worse. And the impression that came back was that there was a failure of trust, that by commission or omission, we think many of those that handle the OIA requests that we have, whether by direct or indirect influence, do not have the principles of the Act at heart. And the principles of the Act go to the public interest. We don't trust the responses that we get. Now, we could be completely wrong, and I might have made a horrible mistake in talking about these things, but because none of us talk to each other anymore, we don't really know. Caught between the beehive and the media, public service doesn't really know which way to face. Safety is the best way of operating. So one of the things that we get through this is the general dump, because you've started having these techniques that are used to get around the Act. You get And an OAA goes in for something, and you get a letter back saying, "Ooh, we need an extension, another 20 working days." So another 20 working days goes on, and then you chase it up, and they go, "Oh yes, look, sorry about that. We'll get that to you as soon as we can. It's just approaching sign-off." Another 10 days passes, and you think, "No, this is really taking the mickey. I need to complain to the Ombudsman." I'll ring them up, and they say, "Oh yes, so we have a letter in the post to you." I open the letter and it says, "Well, the information is soon to be released publicly, so we have reason to refuse it," which is the letter of the law, but it's certainly not the spirit of the law. And then the information does get released publicly, the 10 pages that you want in amongst a dump of 2,000 pages. And it feels like dirty tricks. So the general dump manages to push things off to a time where it's going to be less, or seen as less newsworthy. It's outside the immediate timeliness of the news, and it often comes late in the day, very often comes late in the week. Dump day, the best dump day to have is right before a long weekend, so that you chuck it out on a Thursday afternoon when Friday's a public holiday. Everybody's going away, no one's going to read it. And it's seen that it seems by those that control the release of the information that that's a good way to bury bad news. And we've adapted to that, or we've started to adapt to that. And you get what I see as an extremely odd arms race. And it's an arms race that has the media. It's an arms race that has the media turning to really good analytical tools. Most of it's available online and has been sponsored or developed by journalism organisations abroad. And it lets us take thousands of scanned PDFs that get released on dump days and to analyse them, and we can categorise them just through doing text searching into timelines, and we can match entities and characters and dates, going through thousands and thousands of pages, and it's something that you can come back to and revisit time and time again. It's crazy that we would do this, turning to technology to try and get what we think is the truth of what the public's entitled to from a system that seems to be working harder and harder to make it more and more difficult for us to do that. We do other odd things. Sources have always been a very important part of what journalists do. I find that I talk to people that work in roles that you guys work in and ask them, what's in this particular document, so that or can you get me a copy of this document? Can you take photographs of this document? Can you get a thumb drive into work and get a copy of it for me so that I can OAA it and I know if they're lying to me when it doesn't come back the way that it's meant to come back? I find that crazy. We're developing the Heralder secure drop system, which is a system that means that people can upload leaked or can leak to us documents. They can upload it to us in a way where it's encrypted from their perspective so that they will be protected. We won't know who they are, but we will have the documents in a way that's completely secure for people to leak to us. It's mad that we're going down that path. It's very sad to me that this happens. So I turned to my colleagues and asked them how they felt they were being treated in terms of the OAA when it came to the guiding principles of the legislation. I asked them, does the way the public service handles your requests achieve the following? Does it enable more effective participation by the public in the making and administration of laws and policies? Sometimes they thought, okay. Does it promote the accountability of ministers of the Crown and officials? No, not at all. Enhance respect for the law and promote good government in New Zealand? No, not at all. And there's a very experienced political journalist who said to me, the whole culture of the Wellington Public Service towards the OAA is governed by two things: the need not to embarrass your minister or your department, putting chances of promotion or even your job at risk, and the need to uphold the law, which public servants are more conscious of than you might think. The result is that public servants block requests for as long as they can and delete as much as they can using whatever section of the OAA Act that they can. An exception for me, and it's not an exception that covers the entire agency, but because there's always head office or headquarters in this case, is the 9,000 uniformed police staff that New Zealand has. And the reason that that's exceptional in terms of dealing with the public service, to me, is because under their general orders, every single one of those uniformed staff is allowed to speak to the media. They are given explicit instructions in their basic orders that they can talk to the media. And so that means that when we turn up in a car crash and we say, so officer, what happened here? They can say, well, the car's crashed, and they're not breaking any rules doing that. If it happened for any other government department, we'd probably be told to send an email to the comms team, and then the comms team would come back to us a couple of days later and they'd tell us that one car was a Mazda and one was a Ford. But not necessarily that they crashed. But at police headquarters, the comms staff are not all that different than many others. I think that in many ways they're better, but they're not that much different. But the general police staff, general police uniform staff are allowed to talk. And I think that's one of the best advertisements that the police has for the work that they do. For all the criticisms that they face, they have largely professional men and women that are able to speak freely to anybody that they encounter. And that's a great advertisement. From the perspective of police headquarters, I think it's a signal of a willingness to be open, a willingness to be honest to a degree, and having the courage to back your staff to do their jobs. I think it's really important that they believe in their staff, their uniformed staff, and they back them to do their jobs. That's why they're free to talk. Across other departments, it's not always possible to do that when the beehive comes calling. So 2015, we've got an ombudsman's inquiry. It's 31 years after the OIA came into practice and 33 years after the legislation was passed. And to me, it's incredible that during that time, government has not become automatically open, transparent by default. That after 30 years of dealing largely with the same type of information, we should know, everybody should know, what can be withheld and what can be released. Instead, it's become far more clumsy and cluttered and difficult to get information which people should be entitled to, not media, but people should be entitled to as a right, as citizens. To me, after all that time, there should be fewer secrets and no surprises, not for anyone in society, particularly not for the citizens. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to crack on, and if you want to catch up and watch it later on, there's actually 3 more other videos that they put out as well that you might find interesting. But before I open it up for a brief discussion, because I really like to get your guys' feedback, you know. But before I do that, what I actually want to do is, and even though you guys have already read it, I actually wanted to read the email that I sent to him, because I think it gives it a bit more context if I read it from how I was feeling at the time. So that just gives it a little bit more context. Kia ora, David. My email bounced back because I spelt your email address wrong. LOL. I know we started off on the wrong foot, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to have a cordial with you. I found this video linked below, dated 13 April 2015, where you gave a seminar about the struggles you as a journalist faced when dealing with OIA, government departments, and ministers. I watched the video several times and I thought to myself, that is the sort of journalist we need today. Someone with the courage and conviction to challenge processes that are not working for the general public interest. Are these the same challenges you have today? What's changed in respect to the Official Information Act that either makes it easier or harder for you to report on the facts? In these most difficult and challenging times, when the public are constantly challenging journalistic ethics and integrity, do you still hold those same values that appealed to me in this 2015 presentation? I'm reaching out to you because I am concerned. I believe we need someone in journalism to restore faith and trust to report unbiased and true facts. We need journalists who are willing to answer the many questions that we all need answers to. You already know what those questions are. people don't want to automatically hear that the questions they are asking are conspiracy theories, misinformation, and downright stupid. People just want a seasoned, respected journalist to investigate without bias. I'm offering you the opportunity to speak to this and look forward to your reply. I do intend to release this video for public viewing, but wanted to reach out to you first out of respect to you. I do believe at the time of this recording, you are a journalist with integrity, which is what I believe our country needs right now. Mauri ora. And so that's it in a nutshell for me. And I really wanted to put that out to people to get their views on what I was actually hearing, because it seems to have changed quite dramatically and quite quickly. You know, that was only 2015. That's not that long ago, really. There was a 1.5 election cycle, you know. So what really has changed? And I want to get your guys' feedback on that and your views on what you heard and what you saw. If anyone wants to sort of give their feedback on it. Maybe you, Eric, you can start with us first. Yeah, awesome.
Well, yeah, in that video, he seems keen to kind of expose how the government is controlling the narrative. But now it seems like he's keen to control the narrative on social media in regards to vaccination, injuries, or gangs being involved. You know, where did the flip happen? There's like a lot of hypocrisy. Why did the flip happen, and where did it happen? Was there like a payoff that happened, or something that occurred there in terms of corruption? That's kind of where I want to kind of figure out what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Patrick, what are your thoughts, Patrick? Can you mute your mic, Eric?
Well, knowing the guy personally, and I had dealings with him probably close to 2016, I guess, meeting him personally in Kirikiri, I found him a reasonable sort of a guy. But at the start of this, 3 months ago, I emailed him and he phoned me, and we had quite a long conversation, and I replayed it back in my head a number of times, and he contradicted himself, like very similar to what you're watching now, the YouTube clip you've seen, and the way he is now, it's like you say, he's done a complete backflip. I emailed him a couple of times with a big list of questions and got no answers. I actually tackled the thalidomide thing with him in comparison to what we're doing today, and he wasn't really interested. So I sort of 10 year, the guy has flipped. He's gone completely the other way. He's followed the government narrative. We can't predict if he's been paid or guess. I think that's a dangerous avenue to go down, but he's certainly what I consider very, very one-eyed and one point of view now. And my questions to him was, at the time, they've done their research. He said, we've checked with all our experts, whatever we report is actual, and anything else that the rest of you say is not true, because our sources are more true or truer than what you guys are being able to source. So that pretty much summed it up for me. And he got to the point where useless as a reporter reporting the facts. That sort of sums him up for me.
Anybody else? Yeah, let me check. Then before we yeah, no. Okay, so my question is, what do we do from here? You know, is there more that we can do? You know, we've all got certain sets of skills and tools that we bring to the mix. And you know, do I continue down this road of I wouldn't say exposing certain journalists, but finding a way to appeal to their humanity, you know, because I still believe that there's a human. I know a lot of people believe that they're aliens and they're devils and all that sort of thing. Well, that's their views. But, you know, there's somewhere in there, there's a human. and I've tried so hard to appeal to that, and I thought the conversations I've had with him would do something. And he did reply to me. I'm not going to share that at this stage, but he also sent a series of messages to an unnamed person. I'm going to leave those at this stage because they do border on defamation. So I'm going to leave those for now. So, I'm trying to appeal to him, and I don't know. I don't understand what it is he's so pushing back on that sort of side of it, So I don't know what we do from here, but what I do appreciate is you guys turning up. I am going to share this on social media, as I mentioned, for others to digest and get their views on it, because it really wasn't, and I don't feel that it was a hit piece. I've seen other comments on other pages that I put it on, oh, this guy's doing a hit piece, and well, nah, not me. I'm not out to do a hit piece on him. I genuinely am trying to appeal to him some way and get some journalist. I think what I've seen is a couple of journalists are starting to turn, but I don't know what that's about. Yeah.
Can I suggest something?
Yeah.
As you guys wouldn't know, but I write for a magazine once a month, and for Deals on Wheels on forestry, and I have to make sure that my facts are correct. My thoughts of listening to you all now is I don't think David can be turned. I think he's gone that far down the rabbit hole. It's a wasted cause. But there are ways of dealing with it, and that is by presenting our cases, whether through Katie's Facebook, or whatever channel we have, that we present our own cases and information that we receive, that we present it factually and accurately, and just take them full on like that, so that we turn people that have been listening to this guy and believing what he says and proving otherwise. But we have to make sure you do your research, and we have to be factual, and there's enough information out there now for us to be able to do that. And if you choose to do it, Rob, that'd be great, because you have the technical skills and what have you. And whether it's to the point where, like in Australia, they're running a Rebel News, that we have our own site now where we tell the other side of the story truthfully and honestly.
Yeah. I'm also wondering, Patrick, and you might have some experience on this, I don't know, but what can we do? And Katie just asked the question. I wonder if we can do an OIA request to the Herald, or how we go about doing that, and is that something we look at doing?
This information should be readily available. You should be able to do a research on any government site, because I think any member of the public can request an OIA. But then it's a matter of getting it approved. And if what he says in that video in 2015, 10, 20 days, but then we must, and through your contacts, other people's contacts, be able to contact other experts in the field that they're all over the world, have an opinion. And if we use Susie Wells for an example, that also have an opinion different to hers, the facts can be put out there, because once this ball's rolling, we can't stop it. We need to keep it going. You've started a ball rolling here. I know for a fact that we've exposed holes in David Fisher, and my own emails and things like that to him have been wasted, but then it just confirmed that he's no longer an equal reporter that's reporting both sides fairly.
Can I ask, do we have a media ethics organization within New Zealand that could be appealed to, like a board that oversees kind of the ethical aspects of journalism within New Zealand?
I wouldn't know off the top.
Because we might look into that. I mean, you can typically appeal to those types of organizations if you have a serious enough case to show that there's like a major bias occurring. Maybe that's something we should look into and just think about.
Yeah. Good point, Eric. Great point. Yeah. Well, if no one else has anything else, I think we might leave it there.
Wait, just a sec.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes. Go, Katie. Go, Katie.
I just did. I just looked up, and there is a New Zealand Media Council, and it said something like a publication should be bound at all times by accuracy, fairness, and balance, and should not be deliberately misled or misinformation readers by and something. So there is something that governs this. So that we could look into that. I think that might be an idea. And if anybody else has any, I know me and Rob and everyone else would be keen to hear as well if there's any ideas. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Jamie. Did you have any thoughts after seeing all of that?
No, I'm just sort of taking it in. I'm not very familiar with our journalists here.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well,
I think
thank
it's
you,
a good-
Rob.
It's a good opportunity for all of us to sort of sit back and then, just like you've done, Katie, do a bit of research and put our heads together again. And as I say, present both sides. And there's enough experts out there to offer alternatives that we're getting right now.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Rob, John here. Can I just ask a question?
Oh, yes. Go ahead, John. Welcome.
Has anybody approached Richard Prosser? He has some interesting insight into the
I can't hear him.
journalist world.
Sorry, John, my producer. It was in my, what was that again?
Has anybody approached Richard Prosser? He has some interesting insights into the journalist world.
Can you give us a bit more information on Richard Prosser? Who's that? That's Richard Prosser.
Richard Prosser is now based in the UK, but he's a Kiwi journalist. Used to work with Ian Wishart a lot.
Oh, wonderful, Ian.
Yeah, Ian seems to be off the other side of the board at the moment, but
Yeah.
Richard has insights into that as well. He has communicated with my wife a couple of things about that.
Oh, okay.
A month ago, a few weeks ago, Matt King came on and he had an old New Zealand journalist who was going to present the other side. I just can't think of his name, we'd have to look it up. But he was keen to get going back into it and presenting it in a factual manner. I would like to come back to you. We'll find out who it was. He was a well-known New Zealand journalist. And I listened to him for, what was it, about 20 minutes. Yeah. He went on and wanted to get an alternative point of view out there that we weren't getting. So if I can find that name, that might be worthwhile, an avenue following.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I have one more for you, Rob. Rebecca White is the science editor for National Geographic.
Rebecca White.
She was on a page that I'm involved in and was talking about investigating adverse reactions.
Oh, okay. So
I started private messaging and feeding her information, but all of a sudden she's gone quiet. So I don't know what's happened there.
And there's Richard Prosser. How do you spell? Any idea how to spell that? So Prosser.
Prosser.
SSER. Hockey dokie. Any last? What are you reading there, Ian? Jamie?
One more for you, Rob. That the girl that did that interview the other day, that the next New Zealand journalist was Liz Gunn, and she made quite a speech. So I think these are people we need to be able to use that are not. They are respected journalists in their field. They are recognised, and they've got some pretty high values. So whether we can tap into those people.
Yeah. We'll definitely look into that. Just a weird thing. I know when I put this out, I'm going to get a bit of flack. But when you look at the whole, when you look at the screenshots and the email and what, I don't know that there's anything really to push back on.
We've all been popping flack, mate. I've been capping it for about 3 or 4 years now in the fight against this government. Nothing's really changed. We just got to harden up and just keep going because, we've all lost family and friends and God knows our opinions. Yeah. But that's the way it is. I always look at it that if no matter what the loss, the end result will be beneficial to all.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm actually going to, when I do put it up, I'm going to expect a backlash. I don't know what he's going to put back in, because I know I've seen a lot of people today saying, the Zoom is all about attacking David, and it's all going to be a load of bullshit. But hey, what David put on the video, I didn't say all of that. That he said it,
And the other thing is, if you do get attacked, what I've always found is to never really, you need to stop and digest, because quite often if you retaliate in anger, you say the wrong words.
Oh, absolutely.
Quite often you stop. It's interesting when I write, sometimes if I'm in the wrong mood, it comes out the end of my fingers and you don't realize. You look back and read, you go, wow, did I write that, or was I thinking it?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think a good solid response, and with the fewer amount of words used the possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And impact words and bring him to his knees is probably the best way to deal with it.
Yeah. And my missus tells me that all the time. Less is better, because I tend to like going on and on and on and on. And
exactly. Listen to
her. Yeah. Less is much better. And so I definitely have learned a few things. As that I went through this last year with the election cycle, as Jamie would know, and I will admit I did respond emotionally, and in some cases not angry, but definitely pissed off. and I didn't get the result that I wanted, but I think this time around I want to do it because I'm sick of going in circles. You just keep doing the same thing, getting the same result, and I'm sick of getting, because now it's about my children.
Well, sometimes too, the best way to win an argument is to say the least amount. Hey, the old saying, we have two ears and one mouth, so we listen twice as much as we speak. Quite
often. Okay, hey, thanks to everybody who's joined me this evening, and I really appreciate your feedback, and hopefully we'll touch base again and see what else we can come up with, and do some more investigative journalism, and see what we come up with next year. So if you have any ideas, and if you want to make contact or some other things come to your head, don't be shy to DM me or email me. I think you'll find me. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks everybody. Thanks Katie. Thanks everybody. Thanks John. Thanks Lisa.
Thanks everyone. Cheers.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks.